Hey, Oz!
Yes, Curtis.
What movie are we watching this week?
We are watching A Marriage of Father of the Bride, High Fidelity, and that scene from Sixth Sense where the lady who gets killed riding her bike talks to Cole in the car while Toni Collette's sitting there too. We're watching Hearts Beat Loud.
That scene for the Sixth Sense.
That scene where she gets killed on the bike. I figure this movie's got a bike death and Toni Collette. That's the only thing I could think of that married the two together.
There you go. I like it.
Welcome back, listeners, to another week of Let's Talk About Flicks, that weekly podcast where we take a theme for the month and we go back and forth sharing films. This week is my week. I'm one of your hosts, Oz.
And I'm Curtis.
And we are covering... I didn't even look at the year. It doesn't matter.
I think
Hearts Beat Loud.
2018.
2018's Hearts Beat Loud. Just a very sweet, but non-really romantic, but there's some romance. But it's just a sweet film.
Yeah, just a
I'll just leave it at that.
Cute little indie flick continuing our March month of movies about music, as opposed to musicals. Yes. Movies about music. Yes, very, very well said. So, who we got character-wise? Character-wise, I only got a half a dozen for us this week, guys. Again, it's a pretty small-scale movie. It really keeps to itself. So we got 6 characters. We have Frank Fisher, played by the one and only Nick Offerman.
Yeah, which I think he really stretches. I won't say stretches his chops, but I think the world knows him as Ron Swanson.
Yeah,
and so anytime he's not Ron Swanson. Everyone's like, wow. But no, I mean, he's a fine actor.
How come you're not Ron Swanson right now?
Right. Is that a smile on your face?
Yeah. Then we have Sam Fisher, played by Kiersey Clemons. Sam is Frank's daughter, his teenage daughter, senior in high school or just graduated. It's the summer between senior year and freshman year in college. And she's almost off to UCLA, Oz.
Yes, pre-med.
Mm-hmm. Then we have Marianne Fisher, played by Blythe Danner, and that's Frank's father, Sam's grandmother.
Yeah, klepto grandma.
Yes, yeah, she likes to steal.
Yeah, so look, I think there's some obvious early onset dementia in play here that leads to such behavior. Mm-hmm. But
however,
but yes,
that's what people interpret as that she likes to steal.
Right.
Then we have Leslie, played by Toni Collette, and Leslie is Frank's landlord at the music store he owns. So yeah, she's the property manager. She owns that property, and maybe something else. We'll see.
Yeah, that only took 17 years to come to fruition.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, 17 years. Then we have 2 other characters. We have Dave, played by who else? Ted Danson.
Why not Ted Danson?
Yeah, why not Ted Danson? Playing a bartender.
Yeah, that's where I was gonna go. It's just right in his wheelhouse.
Yep.
Dave should have named him Sam instead of Dave.
Well, Sam was taken already because that's the daughter's name.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, that's true. There's a Sam and a Ted Danson and a bar, but it's not Cheers.
So Dave is Frank's best friend or best friend enough, something like that. Kind of his confidant. Basically, someone for Frank to talk to who's not Sam. And then we have Rose, played by Sasha Lane, and Rose is Sam's girlfriend.
Yeah.
So fellow recent graduate of the same high school Sam went to. Girlfriend.
Yeah. Yep.
That's it. So those are the only 6 characters we got.
It is a tight little cast, and it fits just fine. So. All right, plot-wise, really this movie is, we've covered some things throughout the months where, even last week Scott Pilgrim was, just this energetic force of a movie, just everywhere and anywhere that it could go. And so it really tightens up and winds down in this regard, where this, this film really does play out like your traditional film of scene, and then the plot flows through it, and it's an unobstructed river of a story that we've got to tell here. So let's say we start with like we established with Frank. Frank works he owns a record store. I didn't write down the name of it. I didn't start taking notes until about 10 minutes in. I was like, I need to take notes on this.
I think Red Hook Records, was that the name?
Red Hook Record. Yes, they're in New York. So Frank owns a record store in New York. He's been running it for 17 years. And this opening scene is Frank being Frank. He's there. There's the gentleman. He lights up a cigarette. There's a gentleman that, and he's got a pair of headphones on. He's listening to Jeff. Is it Jeff Tweedy? Am I saying that right?
I think, Jeff Tweedy.
Yeah. So he's listening to, watching a Jeff Tweedy video, listen to him. And there's a gentleman that's asked, you can't smoke. And Frank just doesn't really care. Tells him, you buy something, I'll put it out. So the guy, in a frustration, he leaves, goes outside, buys the same album on Amazon, and just kind of rubs it in Frank's face. And it's just, we get a very early indication of that's kind of what Frank is. He's just, hey, I'm here. If you want something, great. If not, we find out that, things are winding down for Red Hook Records.
Yes.
So, but Frank that's where he spends his time. He spends his days at the record store.
And he's very stubborn. He's very stubborn.
Very Frank. Yeah. So we cut to, Sam, who's sitting in a pre-med class before leaving for pre-med school at UCLA. Very intelligent girl, obviously. And this is just what she wants to do. And so we just kind of get our two main characters established there. And then, Leslie comes into the store and, just kind of chats with Frank and, buys an album. And he tells her, hey, when you got some time, I'd like to talk to you about something. And of course she's like, I've got time right now. And so it kind of catches Frank off guard a little bit because he's dropping the bad news that he's not going to renew and he's closing the store. After 17 years, it's time. We cut back to Sam, who's now at an art gallery. Looking at art with Rose, and you could tell there's a connection there.
Oh, definitely.
It hasn't established.
Definitely.
Yeah, it hasn't. Yeah, that's one thing this movie did not hide well, if it was intending to, was the romantic connection between characters. Like everything was telegraphed by a mile away.
Oh yeah.
And so and we don't know officially yet that they're together, if they even are together at this point, but they're going to be together. You could tell there wouldn't be this connection on screen. But like I said, this is just kind of the movie flows. It's just back and forth between these scenes. And then they come home. This is how they spend their days apart. So we get home. Sam's working on some homework, and Frank pops in, and he's just kind of being dad. Obviously a lonely dad.
Yes.
Mom's out of the picture. We find out later on she was, killed in a biking accident. And so it's just Frank and Sam now. And Frank's just kind of sitting there, and he's, Sam's not picking up the clues, so he just says, "Hey, look at the time. It's time for jam sesh. We gotta have a jam sesh."
He just wants to spend time with his daughter, Oz.
Right.
That's all he wants.
Yeah, he does. He really does. And it's difficult for him because without a mom in the picture for as long as she's been gone, there's a void there. Like, he's a dad that wants to connect with his daughter, who is a teenager that doesn't want to connect with her parents. That's just teenager, it's par for the course.
Well, she's leaving soon. She's going to UCLA. Right, yeah. I mean, she's clearly driven. Like, this is supposed to be summer. Graduation's happened already. She's taken some kind of pre-med class, whether it's through the community college or just something like a non-credit something or other. She is driven.
Very driven. Yeah, she wants to get out of New York. And start her life, and I don't blame her for it. And so he does talk her into jam sesh. They're going to go work on jam session, and you could tell that music is very important to both of these. Obviously, it's Frank's life, but Sam she's an experienced musician. She's a great singer. Like, she's got chops in a more in a more digital realm than maybe Frank does. Frank is still very traditional instruments, and she's over here working on a MIDI keyboard and and other things of that nature. And they just kind of stumble on a song that Sam wrote that day called Hearts Beat Loud. And then we've got just a pretty sweet montage of they're just fleshing the song out. You get the vibe that it's taken them all night. They've worked out every instrument that they can, and they've got a song now. They've got a song. And
in the course of one night, they put it together.
Right, and he is giddy as all get out. He's just so excited. He's he's always wanted to have, be in a band with his daughter. And of course, she wants nothing to do with it just because I don't want to be in a band with my dad. And it's just this cute scene where she's brushing her teeth the next morning, getting ready to go to school, I'm assuming. And he pops in and he's just like, we're banned. We need a name. And she goes, we're not a band. We're not a band. And he's like, I love it.
That's the name of our band. That's the name.
And so they go their separate ways as they do each morning. And so he goes to work, she goes off. And what does Frank do when he gets to work?
Frank, when he gets to work, let's see. I know. Well, in the meantime, he had gotten a call from the police about his mom.
Oh, yeah. I did leave that out just because it comes up later. But yeah. He did.
Yeah, mom was stealing again. Or at least that's what the police think. And so he had to come get her from the police because she's probably got
they let her go. Like
early onset dementia and
Right. And you could tell because as he's standing there, talking to the police officer, she looks over at him and just waves with a big smile on her face, like it's not clicking with her. And so he heads off to work, after all of this. And it's this kind of roller coaster of emotion for him.
Yeah.
His daughter's leaving, his mom's mind is leaving, the record store is about to leave. Like there's a lot of
change
coming all at once.
Yep.
For Frank. And
Frank's not sure how to handle it, so he kind of retreats to the familiar, and that's his daughter, and the lingering days that his store has left.
Yeah, and so he goes back to work, and he has the song, and he just uploads it to Spotify.
Why not?
Let's just see what happens here. He uploads the song to Spotify with the band named We're Not a Band. And just doesn't think twice of it. Just there it goes. It's up and it's out
done.
In the cloud.
I hit send.
Which, if you look around at his life outside of his Apple computers that he has, that's about as advanced technology as you see Frank get in the movie is interacting with Spotify. I mean, he's running a record store in a digital world, which is pretty archaic, important, but yet still a symbol of of the olden days kind of thing.
His struggle to let go.
Yeah, and so Frank after work heads to the bar, meets up with Dave, his best friend. Dave runs the bar. Dave is very similar to Frank in terms of he's holding on to these dreams, and yet he's given him all this advice on change. Yet he's not living the life he wants to live either.
Yep.
And so they have a discussion about how, change is good. Change is good, Frank. Change is good. And, even Frank's a little skeptical, like, coming from a guy who's ran a bar for
30 years. Yeah.
For 30 years.
Yeah, Frank calls him on it. He said, Dave, you've been running this bar for 30 years. Dave responds, he says, we don't always get to do what we love, so we have to love what we do. Which is, I think Dave's kind of telling himself that more than he's telling Frank that.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, like, because all Dave really wants to do with his time is smoke weed.
Yeah, that's really it.
And yeah, that's about all he talks about. He got a new guy.
Yeah.
And so earlier on, Sam needs her birth certificate for something, and Frank's not sure immediately where it's at. So
he kind of get the idea he kind of puts it off too because he doesn't want her to go. And that represents she needs it for school, and that represents another step towards her leaving.
Right. But we do cut to a scene where he's going through a box of items, and he does find her birth certificate, but there's a lot of other things in this box that he kind of reminisces over.
Yeah.
Old school papers of hers, pictures of her mom. There's all kinds of things. It's this little keepsake memento box kind of thing. And so we've got, Sam is out with Rose, and, they're talking about UCLA, and Rose is dealing with it a little bit too, because she's just infatuated with Sam. And I think Sam feels the same way, but she knows that she's the piece that's leaving, so she's trying to guard herself a little bit, put some walls up just slightly. but yet they're going to have this conversation about UCLA 2 inches away from each other's face.
Yeah, you could tell that she's trying to be distant, but she in her head she knows what's going on, but her heart just can't say no to this.
Her heart's just beating loud. I mean, she just can't.
as it does.
And of course, and then they kiss, and you see it coming from a mile away.
Oh yeah, of course.
It's fine. It's sweet.
It's a very sweet
care
moment.
About each other. Right. So Sam comes home, and it's late, but Sam comes home, and Frank he's still very excited because
he just went out and splurged, Oz.
Yeah, he bought himself a new guitar and bought her a sampler.
Yep.
She's always wanted one. And after seeing this movie, honestly, I kind of want one too.
It does look pretty cool.
It does look fun.
Yeah.
Even though I would do nothing more than just probably put sound effects like we used to have on our old radio show.
Oh, yeah.
Just, boop, boop,
boop. There's 12 different fart noises.
Right, exactly. And of course, it's such a role reversal here because he's so stubborn he forgets to be the parent sometimes.
Yeah,
he's so giddy. He's so giddy about this. He went and splurged. He spent money on the credit card, and she's reprimanding him. We don't have the money for this, Dad.
Yeah,
you've got to take this stuff back. We can't do it.
There's definitely role reversals in this movie as far as who the mature one is, who acts as the parental figure or authority, and who just kind of takes things as they come.
Yeah, so he's really pushing to be a band. We've got to do this, we've got a song. We need to keep going. And because this is his last ditch effort to really sink his claws into their relationship before he's forced to give it up.
Mm-hmm.
And of course she refuses. She's like, I'm not going to be in a band with my dad. It's not going to happen. Next day, again, just a lot of this. It has a cut feel, like an editing feel, very similar to the Hallmark Christmas movies we did, where it's just scene.
Boom.
But it's much more polished and better done. It's not as cookie cutter as they were.
Well, and Danica McKellar's not in this.
No. She's not in this one. I didn't see anyway. I didn't look at the entire cast list.
Yeah, she might have been hiding in there.
She may have been one of the 6 people at the end of the movie that were
browsing around in the record store.
Right. And so Frank, he realizes, all right, I've irritated Sam. So he's a little coffee shop, kind of a barista kind of, establishment, kind of gives you a Panera, Starbucks kind of feel to it. And he's just there to get something for himself. And then he asks the lady, because you can tell he's a regular.
Oh yeah,
he knows her name, she knows his name, and he's like, what kind of whoopie pie does Sam like? So, he picks up a couple of those. And as he's standing there waiting to pay,
he hears
some music. He hears something coming over the speakers, and it is their song, which is pretty amazing considering they just wrote it like
a day or two before. Yeah.
Right. And so it's playing, and he just geeks out.
Oh, yeah.
He's he's saying to strangers there, this is my song.
That's my song. That's my song. That's my daughter singing.
This is our song. So, he's asking the lady, where's this coming from? Where did you get this? And she's like, that's a Spotify's, new indie mix or whatever. So, we get a quick, very quick cut of, straight out of That Thing You Do, where they hear their song on the radio for the first time, where Liv Tyler hears her song on the radio and she's just sprinting city blocks to get over to Skitch to tell him. And so this is what Frank is doing. He's just sprinting home. I've got to get home and tell Sam.
He's on cloud 9. He just can't wait to tell her.
And and he gets home and he's just ordering her, go to Spotify, go to Spotify, go to just fine, go to Spotify, fine. And so she's understandably upset with him because this was their jam sesh that he without conversation established we're big time now. As he says, 50,000 people could be listening to us right now.
Yeah. But to her, it's he violated her trust. He didn't have her permission to upload this song.
Right. And so she was understandably upset with him.
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing? We're not a band. You know,
exactly.
This. And so he's still in cloud nine. He's gives her whoopie pies. Then he goes to work and writes up a to-do list
an action
for what's
plan
next for the band. Right. And it's like in a notebook, almost like he's, you know, like he's a teenage girl writing, you know, writing her boyfriend's name on the cover of her notebook. Like he's just, hey, we got to do this.
He's just scribbling things down. Yeah.
It's the most drive he's probably had in a decade.
Yeah. Easy.
You know, and so, and it just happens to come on the twilight of his daughter's residence at home. And so Sam comes in, you know, and we've seen this from her a lot, that she cannot fully distance herself from Rose. She cannot fully distance herself from her dad. She cannot fully distance herself from music. Like, she tries so hard to detach herself, not quickly, but in enough time to be like, when I'm gone, you'll be fine. But she can't do it. And so she comes into the store and they discuss writing a new song. You know, and he reveals he's got an old notebook full of lyrics and poems. She kind of laughs at him. You have a book of poems. And he's like, these are songs. And so and this is one of they do this about 3 or 4 times in the movie where, you know, they take actually a chunk of time from the film and actually perform a full song. Not in a musical sense, though. Everything fits here. And I think the big difference between what we're covering this month and what a musical covers is, I feel like in a musical, people just burst into song at any random time. You know, you think of something like The Sound of Music or Mary Poppins or Willy Wonka or even Wizard of Oz. Like, every song they sing in those movies could be a conversation, but they just burst into song instead. Whereas the kind of movies we're covering this month are the opposite of music plays a part because there are musicians in our movies, or music is an integral part. And so this, you know, when we, you know, the Hearts Beat Loud montage covered the whole song. And this scene here where he sits down on a stool and sings the song acoustically to his daughter, he sings the whole song. So, you know, they're not cutting back and forth between. They give the attention to, you know, Frank and Sam in this moment and let them connect. And I think it helps us as the audience connect to them too.
Yeah, well, and kind of on that musical versus movies about music note, musicals typically, you know, the songs kind of tell the story, like they advance the plot. Where in this movie, the songs are just more kind of emotional resonance for the characters. Right. So it's more about character development than it is about moving the story forward.
Yeah, it's a good point. And, you know, of course, Sam just listens and realizes the song's about, you know, her mom and her as well. And so it's nice just seeing, you know, it's nice seeing Nick Offerman play these levels of emotion. I mean, he's trying to contain his excitement, but then he lets himself open up and you know, really, I won't say be vulnerable because it's his daughter, but basically be vulnerable as well. You know, cut to Frank and Leslie are going out to dinner. She's treating him out to dinner because the store's closing and they've had a business relationship for so long, and he deserves it. And he's thankful for it. You know, he's not.
He wore his button shirt.
Yeah, this is my button shirt.
My button shirt.
And you know, and then, you know, it starts with dinner, and then they're at a karaoke bar, and she's singing, and he's just enjoying the moment, and you know, they've had some to drink, and then karaoke's over, but they're still at the karaoke bar, and of course they're sitting. They're like, we get the vibe they're the only ones in there.
Yeah,
you know,
they're closing the place down.
Yeah, the lights are still flashing, and they're sitting, you know, inches from each other, and you know, and they, you know. We splice in Sam's now the one at home. She's working on a new song. Yeah. Frank opens up to Leslie about Sam and his past, the hardships of kids growing up. She's sharing her experiences. She's got a son she's had to let go before, you know. But I think their relationships with their kids are a little different. As she's like, oh, God, I couldn't wait for him to get out of the house. You know, he was just, you know, dragging down. Because as we see with Leslie, she's putting herself out there to have a life of her own. And while she loves her son, viewed him as almost like, I have to be home taking care of him. You know, I'm kind of anchored, you know, a little bit. I can't be myself and free, you know, when I'm taking care of my kids. So whereas it's the exact opposite with Frank. Is I want nothing more than to be home with Sam, and she's the one that's having to go. And so and then they kiss, and and again you saw it coming from, even Jenny said, she goes, "Oh, I didn't see that coming."
Yeah. And then while they're still out, they end up back at Dave's bar. Dave gives them some of the good rum that the three of them drink together.
The good stuff. It's just like a bottle of water.
Yeah.
It is like crystal clear rum. Like there's not a blemish in it.
No. And then another guy walks in, some dude named Ryan.
I actually have in my notes, Ryan, just another dude.
But Leslie knows him. And there's obviously something between them. And Leslie introduces Frank as her friend and her tenant.
Right.
So it's
despite the fact that they were on a date.
So there's something there. Frank is feeling even more just kind of out of sorts now than before. Poor Frank.
Yeah, I know. You do feel bad for him in the movie.
Yeah.
Because then you really think, like, he's a normal guy.
Yeah.
Frank is not, there's nothing like emotionally wrong with him. Like he's a guy. He's an average dad. I mean, at one point they show him wearing like cargo shorts and New Balance shoes. Like, he's a dad.
That's his dad. His dad is dad's dad.
He is. He's a dad, and he's not a creep. He's not a weirdo. And you just think, like, there's got to be millions of people out there in very similar situations. And you just feel bad that connection is hard. And when what you've been holding on to in your life is slipping away and it's completely out of your control, and you've done nothing to necessarily deserve it, it's like there's just a huge void.
Yeah.
It's,
but let alone
it's one thing to...
Let alone the tragedy he's endured as well.
Exactly. That he's never really, at least to our knowledge, never really recovered from. He still hasn't. I mean, not that anyone would ever fully recover from losing a spouse, but and so we got Ryan, just a dude, and you see that connection. So we see Frank and Sam. They continue working on Sam's new song, and Sam reveals, because she's like, it's just a song, and he's like, that's a love song. That's
a love song. Like he calls BS on her right away.
Yeah, that's a love song. And she's like, oh, every song's a love song. So naturally, he quotes a Butthole Surfer. And she's like, that's not a love song. And but he calls her on it, and she opens up. She's like, it's it's about my girlfriend Rose. Or he asks her. He just goes straight to it, which I think is so awesome. He just goes, "You have a girlfriend?" Not a boyfriend.
Yeah, because he knows his daughter.
He knows his daughter, even though they've probably never talked about it. He knows, and it's not a big deal.
No,
I love that part, where you got a girlfriend? And she just looks at dad or a boyfriend like, hey, but I just think it's so cool that he started with, do you have a girlfriend? And was not weirded out by the conversation. I just thought that was so cool. And she reveals she's got a girlfriend named Rose. And so another, like I said, I feel like we sound like we're skipping parts when we say cut to, but that's really what's going on in the movie is cut to. And to be honest, this movie might be a little trickier to find. And so if you, and I'm willing to go on a limb and say you listeners out there probably have not seen this already. If you have, kudos to you for being an indie film fan. But, obviously, as we've covered before, we're spoiling the plot.
You wouldn't be listening if you weren't okay with that.
Right. But also, to be fair, like, there's nothing hidden. There's no twists or anything in this movie.
That's all very straightforward.
Even though we're talking about it in detail, it's still worth a watch. Like, it's, don't be like, oh, well, there's no point in seeing it now. They ruined it. We really haven't ruined anything, because indie films are about the performance of the production staff. They're of the actors and actresses. It's all about performance, because there isn't the budget to bring in all of the big special effects and things like that. So it's about the story. It's about the performers. And so it's definitely worth seeing it for that regard. So, but yeah, I feel like we keep saying cuts to. But that's really is what's going on. So we do see Frank's out for a walk, and there's a white bicycle, like tethered to a street light.
Mm-hmm.
And that bike does stick out because that bike is pure white.
Yeah.
Well, then we focus in on the this. It's the memorial plaque of where his wife was killed.
Yeah. So it reveals it was about a dozen years prior. So,
right.
Sam would have been about 6 or so years old when it happened.
Yeah.
Gives you a little more history.
Old enough to remember her mom.
Yeah. A little more history on both Sam and Frank and kind of where they were at in their lives when that happened.
Yeah. And he just sits on the curb and pulls out a book. And I mean, it's his moment. It's his spot. So, Sam's visiting klepto grandma. They have some soup.
Yep.
Grandma, klepto grandma sounds. It's like some sci-fi term.
I think that might have been a Butthole Surfer song.
Klepto grandma, or at least a trauma film.
Yeah, coming this fall from Lloyd Kaufman.
Klepto grandma. So, grandma's telling her about how she got started singing. So we see music has been part of this family lineage for quite a while. Grandma's talking about how she got started singing and how she met her grandpa. And it's just, and you can tell again that they don't come right out and talk about dementia in the movie, but Sam's there visiting with grandma. You could tell to kind of keep an eye on her, to kind of help her out. And when grandma finishes the story, Sam's just listening to it, and she even says, she's like, along the lines of, I love that story. It's not the first time she's heard this story.
Mm-hmm.
But she listens because that's what grandma needs. Grandma needs, not an eye rolling, I've already heard this story, grandma response, but to her, it's the first time she's probably,
just some validation.
She's never told the story
just
before.
Some connection, some validation. That's all grandma needed.
Right. We see Frank, he's at like a deli bakery type store. Mm-hmm. He's walking by and he sees a help wanted in the window.
Yeah, he's closing up the shop. He's got to do something next.
He applies for a job. And one of the, it's a small, I wouldn't even call it an issue, but it was a minor eye-rolling
the convenience. Yeah.
Yes.
Who happens to walk by.
Right. Leslie happens to walk by and sees Frank in the window filling out the application.
He's literally right in front of the window. Yeah.
Right. And I'm like, you guys, while you're not in New York City, you guys are in New York. Like, that. And I understand, I'm sure like Chicago, New York is full of its neighborhoods. I
think they're in Brooklyn. So, I mean, they're not like downtown Manhattan, but they're in Brooklyn.
Right. But it's still a large enough area. But it's like, I'm sure that, you kind of stick to your territory. You stay in your neighborhood or whatever. But I'm like,
really?
Leslie, like you're everywhere.
Mm-hmm. You're everywhere the movie needs you to be.
Exactly. How convenient. And so Leslie, she wants to talk to Frank. She has an idea.
Yeah, she does.
Hates to see the record. She doesn't want to see the record store go. She talks to him about rebranding, becoming a partnership. Maybe we put like a coffee bar back here, and basically she's wanting to change Frank's store. Mm-hmm. And we see Frank's stuff. I like my flow. I've put 17 years working on this flow. I like my flow.
She believes in him. She believes in the store, and it has potential. Yeah. And could that be a metaphor for she believes in him and he has potential? Oz.
Right.
Maybe.
And so, we're back in it's got to be Rose's place because it's not Sam's place, but it looks like a dorm room. Like.
Yeah,
one
of their bedrooms.
Dorm room.
Yeah,
we're back in someone's room, and Sam is sharing "Hearts Beat Loud" with Rose, and they lay in bed, 3 inches from each other, and just open up to each other. Rose is like, let's do something tomorrow. Like she senses Sam is not pulling away, but Rose isn't stupid either. She realizes, this woman I love, the end is here. What are we going to do? She's like, I have an idea. Let's do something tomorrow. Okay, what do you want to do? Let's ride bikes to Coney Island.
Bikes.
Just not You're right.
Yeah.
And Rose is aware, but just I think we've probably all been in that scenario where we absolutely have zero intent to come off as insensitive, but we just don't think about everyone else's life experiences.
Yeah.
And I think that's where Rose gets hit.
She put her foot in her mouth.
Yeah, and she didn't mean to. She quickly apologized. She's like, let's bike to Coney Island. It'll be fun. And Rose is like, I don't have a bike. Well, I can get you a bike. Yeah. That's not a problem. And then it hits her. And like, oh,
Sam's mom. Yeah,
I'm so sorry. And Sam wasn't mad. She understood. She's like, I don't know how to ride a bike. I mean, and you get a sense here that's a hand down from Dad.
Oh, yeah.
No, you will never be on a bicycle because a freak accident happened to your mom on a bike, and I don't blame her. I don't want that to happen to you.
Yeah.
But it's again
trauma manifesting.
Well, and it's obviously like in this situation, this started with her age like 5 or 6 of, not Dad being a bad dad, but Dad taking something away because in fear that that he may lose her over it.
Yeah.
And so you're not riding a bike. And so Frank, he's kind of out and about. He's again going for another walk during the day. He leaves his record store unattended quite a bit. But we've only seen him have one customer thus far, 2 if you count Leslie.
Yeah.
So Frank goes for a walk, and he looks like he's going like towards Leslie's place, and he sees Leslie with Ryan going into the building. And so
Ryan,
it kind of breaks his heart.
Yeah.
So he walks away, heads back to the store. And then we get a random dude come into the store, Joe.
Mm-hmm.
He introduces himself.
Are you Frank Fisher from the band We're Not a Band?
Yeah.
He works for a record company.
Yeah.
And they're interested.
Works for a record. Yeah. So Frank's excitement right back through the roof. Mm-hmm. Oh boy, here we go.
Yeah, at home, Sam's working on the music. She's using that sampler that she was
the one that
she was that she was upset with Frank, but she's using it. Yeah, she's using it, and she's writing some more music. Frank gets home, and he's so excited. This Joe stopped by, and he wants to sign us to a record deal. They got a gig they want to line us up with, and she's like, "No, I gotta go to school. This is
leaving a week.
This
Dad.
is what's next for me. Like, we're not a band. What about Grandma? Like,
right.
There's other priorities."
And he's just like, maybe don't go.
Yeah.
Just take a year off. Like, let's explore this. And of course she's just like, absolutely not, which I don't blame her.
Yeah. And Frank says something pretty insensitive here and pretty selfish here. He says, that she has the same talent her mother had.
Yeah.
And
Sam sees right through it. She's just, you can't do that, Dad. No, you don't get to do that. He's tried everything in his power to get her excited to do this with him,
and he's desperate.
And he resorts to guilt.
Yeah.
Your mom would say the same thing. And
nope, you don't do that.
And I think he knows, even as he's saying it, this is awful of me to do, but
he's desperate.
Because we cut, again, just the roller coaster of emotions he's going through. As we cut back, Frank's now at Dave's, and he's just getting plastered.
Yeah.
He's just pour me another shot. One more, last one.
Yep.
Because everything's crashing down. He thought he had something with Leslie. It's not working. He got something with the band. It's not working. Sam's leaving. Like, it's just all crashing down. The record store's closing,
Yep.
He's
at the proverbial midlife crisis.
Yeah. He's got no shop, no Leslie, no band, and Sam is leaving. And he takes that one shot and asks Dave for another one. Pour me another one. And Dave just tells me, he goes, "This isn't a business transaction. I'm your friend." Like, no, you're done. I'm cutting you off. And so, then we get the wedding singer-esque, I'm drunk and I'm gonna go stumbling around the neighborhood now. Yep. Mm-hmm. And so he goes to Leslie's, very drunk.
Yep.
And she sees he's drunk immediately and was just like,
she tries she tries backing out of the conversation, and he's not having
it. Because she knows that this isn't real. Like, he's still drunk, and she, like you said, she doesn't want anything to do with this conversation. Good night, Frank. And he turns down the business offer. No, I'm done selling music. I don't want to do that.
Yep.
No, putting coffee in the record store isn't going to save it. And so
he asked where Ryan is.
Yeah, and that was it. That was really
that was okay. We're done. We're done.
Yeah, where's Ryan? Good night, Frank. And and it's like, poor dude.
I know.
Everyone around. I mean, it's everybody around him cares about him, but he's just. And I don't know.
He's struggling. Like, he's struggling. He doesn't know what to do.
Right.
He doesn't know where to turn. Everything he's tried. Every time he gets excited about something, something else shuts it down.
Right. And he just can't get any momentum going. He goes home, records some guitar. This is the next day. He's not drunk and playing.
Yeah.
He's at home the next day, and like I said, this is him at home, in his cargo shorts and New Balance shoes. He's just laying down some riffs. He kind of gets, I'm not familiar enough with music and musical instrument, terminology or whatever, but he's laying down some bass lines and some guitar riffs or whatever, and they're just, it's almost like he's working with a non-instrument sampler. I don't know what that foot pedal does.
He's got some kind of like repeater, so he'll lay down a couple bars of something and then let that continue to go, and then he'll pick up another
and then
instrument.
He'll lay over top of it. Yeah. So, and it's cool. It's cool because he knows his stuff. He is like, he's so talented, and it's just, we see earlier he was in a band. He's got an album. His face is on the cover. Like, there was a past Frank that was everything Frank wanted. And it just, as with everything, life just happens. Not everybody's the Rolling Stones and Keith Richards who just gets to do this for eternity.
Yeah.
And so, and Sam, while he's playing, Sam's out learning how to ride a bike in instantaneous fashion.
Yeah.
Granted, she is an adult, but she goes from the whole wobbly, wobbly handlebars to, all right, I'm good. Let's go Tour de France. Let's take this.
It's like Rose is like kind of like the dad figure teaching like the little girl how to ride the bike,
and she's an amazing, like, she's like the Mr. Miyagi of
she is
of teaching people how to ride a bike. Like, she got this knocked out in like less than an afternoon. Like, you got 10 minutes, Rose, because we could teach you, or 10 minutes, Sam. We could get you on a bike.
The way they shot this scene too, and the way they edited it, it was a weird combination of joy and sad, because you've got Frank laying these tracks down, and the camera is just kind of static on him, whereas you intercut back to Rose and Sam, and they're laughing, and the camera is moving, and and then the shot ends just of that still on Frank, and he just stops playing, and it's just silent. And
yeah, and it is, and they hold it for a moment. Like you said, Sam is finding joy in something that she's been forbidden from her whole life, and it's not even, and it's nothing like tragic. It's not like, oh, if I'd have known about drugs before today, it's riding a bike. It's not anything too crazy. Frank gets called down to the police station. Mom's been picked up again, but Frank has no money, so he swallows his pride and calls Leslie, because it's the only one he knows. Like, he's got Dave, but Dave didn't pick up. We find out he called Dave first. Dave just didn't answer. He's at Woodstock. He was at Woodstock smoking trees.
Yep.
And Leslie bailed. I will pay you back, and Sam, tells Dad, tells Frank she's learned how to ride a bike, and
he doesn't say anything, but he's clearly unhappy.
No, right, and it's just because it's another one of those of, you're experiencing parts of life that I didn't provide for you, and I'm not ready for that to happen yet. And so we start kind of the third act here.
Yeah.
Frank's at the store, and you see it's the last day. We don't see it's the last day yet, but you kind of pick up that there's like $3 like pieces of paper with like $3 price tags on it. Everything must go.
Everything's on sale, and it literally says everything must go everywhere.
Right.
Which happened to be a name of a song that he was working on earlier.
Yes, everything must go. Yeah, and so Sam comes in. She's like, it's the last day of the store. Frank, he calls and leaves a voicemail to Leslie, just apologizing for his behavior. Just, hey, about everything. I apologize about everything.
Yeah.
He realizes he overstepped his bounds. He was a jerk. He's just in a dark place, and he's sorry.
Yeah. Ask for her forgiveness.
Sam, is kind of cute where she moves something aside and sees, on the wall where where they had been marking her height, because he's had this store her whole life.
Yeah.
And so they've been marking her height on the wall. Like, this is, it's kind of foretelling too, because it's his store, but even then he doesn't own it. Like, it's still something that can be taken from him.
Yeah.
He rents it.
But yet,
the marks on the wall,
that height chart, it's just as much home as the apartment.
Right.
Live in.
Exactly. And so, Sam takes a picture of it, and she's got an idea.
Mm-hmm.
I have an idea, Dad. It's the last night. Let's play.
Yeah.
Let's have one last jam.
And she compares it to the Titanic, how the band on the Titanic kept playing as the ship was going down.
Yeah.
Let's be that band.
Let's do it. Frank's nervous, very nervous, but Sam, because we cut to, it's like 8:00.
Yeah.
He's slapped another piece of paper on the, last day open. Like, hey, we're not a band playing live 8:00.
Sam's taught Rose how to run the register, so Rose is there helping.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And it's like Frank's very nervous. Like, and Sam's just like, we got this. Yeah. It's just jam sesh.
Jeff Tweedy of Wilco inexplicably comes into the music shop, which it's like, oh, hey, there's Jeff Tweedy, and then he's gone, and we just took 30 seconds for that.
Well, not only that, but it cracks me up because we saw earlier in the movie Frank watching a video of Jeff Tweedy.
Yeah.
It wasn't listening to Jeff Tweedy. It's one thing if you're listening to a song and you because I wouldn't have known that was Jeff Tweedy if I didn't know who Jeff Tweedy was.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Not every musician has a look, but if you're listening to Wilco and Jeff Tweedy, but you may not recognize them if they're right there in front of you. But when you are watching a video of him playing,
yeah,
not a concert video, but like a video of him playing, and then he's right there behind you. Like, Frank doesn't even recognize that Jeff Tweedy's in his store. Yeah. Like, it is, like you said, it's just kind of like, that's cool that you got Jeff Tweedy to be in there, that's something you can hang your hat on as a filmmaker, mm-hmm. But like, it did nothing. There was no recognition. There was no.
It's like at most, it's the audience going, "Hey, it's Jeff Tweedy." Hey,
it was it was the Donald Trump moment in Home Alone 2. Like, it did nothing. It did nothing for the movie, other than, oh yeah, we got him to be in our movie. So yeah, that's probably the only time you'll see Jeff Tweedy compared to Donald Trump.
Yeah.
So you heard it here. You heard it here first,
and only here.
Yeah. And so they start playing. There's like, Frank opens up, hey, thank you to the 6 of you who have shown up, and they, as he's talking, you see the customers kind of
like, okay,
they're not there. They're not there to listen to music. They're just like, oh, well, all right, whatever,
Yeah, you do your thing. I'm just going to keep shopping.
Yeah, and then they start to play, and the crowd. You see the customers are kind of they're enjoying it. They're kind of looking at each other like, oh, this was better than we anticipated. This isn't too bad. Frank has given Sam just like giddy, like happy dad looks the whole time. Oh yeah, the whole time. He's
just happy to do it. It's like having a catch. Like,
yeah,
let's go have a grab your mitt. Let's go have a catch.
Let's go have a catch.
This is his version of having a catch.
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah, it's look, jam set.
This is what dads do,
was
right?
Nervous, right? Because he was just nervous about playing in front of people. You know, because again, it makes him very vulnerable, and that's something he's worked hard not to be. And so, you know, naturally Leslie comes in because it's, you know, why wouldn't she?
Yeah, because she's everywhere the movie needs her to be.
Right. So she comes in and she's just very surprised, like almost like, wow, you guys have some talent here. Frank then, after Hearts Beat Loud is done, Frank talks Sam into playing the love song she wrote, and Sam's like, it's not ready. Like, and it's almost like a role reversal where the first song she was the motivator and he was the nervous one, and then it flips like it's not ready. And he's looking at her like, what do you mean it's not ready? She's right there. Like, you get to play a personally written love song to the person you love for the first time right now. Like, go
do it.
Yeah, and it was a beautiful song, and they nailed it, and you know, a lot of tears, and you know, and a lot of looking right at her as she's singing it, and it was the wedding singer grow old with you scene at the end. Like, what? Should have just gone wedding singer with my
probably
marriage, but I wanted to go.
Yeah, I mean,
I wanted to go Sixth Sense instead.
I mean, they could have gotten Billy Idol, I suppose, instead of Jeff Tweedy.
He could have been Billy Idling. That's one I think he would have recognized. And then they finished that song, you know, and then I got one more song, fittingly titled "Everything Must Go." Not only is it a, you know, very specific on account of we're closing the store, but also I think Frank's acceptance of everything's got to go, and that's just how life works. It's fine. You know, Sam and Rose, after the song was over, Sam and Rose have their moment outside the store where they both realize that they've got to move on because everything must go. You know, Frank gives Sam a beer, says she deserves it.
Yep.
and asks about, and she, you know, she kind of throws it, you know, they start talking about staying instead of college. Yeah. Like, it's a conversation now as opposed to, you know, an inquiry. Yes. And then cut. Like, that's, you know, it's not the end of the movie, but it's the end of the current timeline. You know, fast forward to some point in time, but she's off to school. Frank has a job. He's working at Dave's bar.
Yeah.
By him working at Dave's bar, he's giving Dave the freedom that he hasn't had for 30 years to go out and smoke trees at Woodstock. You know, and so Frank's working at Dave's bar. His mom lives with him.
He's got a big old jar behind the bar that says Sam's College Fund.
Right, yeah, because there's conversation earlier. UCLA's like $62,000 a year, but because he has no money, it only costs $12,000.
Yeah,
like, you know, there's just some, you know, like was like,
I'm coming back to that in a moment here, by the way.
I'll let you go with that then. Yeah. And you know, as he's working, she texts him a new song idea. You know, like, you know, working on this or whatever, and it just says new song. Yeah. You know, it's because they can still have this. They don't have to be right next to each other. They can still have this. You know, Leslie visits Frank at the bar. He gives her, you know, the the wine glass of water. You know, the good stuff. Don't tell. They
also talk about an album that she bought last night from a band I love called Animal Collective.
I need to look it up because
there's a song on that album called My Girls, which is an absolutely amazing song, and the kind of song that you could see Frank and Sam performing, just the way it's recorded and the way it kind of builds as it goes. So yeah, so Oz, there's your homework. Listen to My Girls by Animal Collective.
I already have it pulled up on Apple Music as you were talking about it.
It's a song that lyrically really speaks to kind of, you know, what Frank really values, and, you know, just kind of, you know, underneath some of the things he's dealing with, he's a really simple guy who just cares about his family.
Right. Yeah. You know, mom lives with him. You know, he's got to take care of stuff. Yeah. And the movie ends with Sam's out on the West Coast, and she's like at an open mic night.
Yeah.
You know, she's still performing and balancing the best of both worlds. Yeah. And, you know, before she even hits a key, just cuts out because that's just where it's at. That's where life is now.
Yeah. And the credits roll.
Yeah, and that, ladies and gentlemen, is 2018's Hearts Beat Loud.
Yeah.
It's just a sweet movie.
It is a very sweet movie. So at this point in the show, folks, Oz and I give our own unique rating to the movie that we've just reviewed and discussed. Oz, how would you rate Hearts Beat Loud?
60 beats a minute.
60 beats a minute? That's a good solid tempo.
Well, I was thinking heartbeats.
Oh, okay.
Either way.
Either way, yeah.
Either way.
Yeah, it's healthy either way.
Yeah. How about you? What's your rating?
I'm going to go with 81 crying dads. I got Misty a couple points in the movie.
The first time I watched it, I did.
Yeah.
I've seen this movie once before, and I think it's important. We talk about our wives quite a bit, but we are both also parents of daughters.
Mm-hmm.
And so, obviously you've got one, and my oldest is a girl. So these are things that we also will be hopefully not quite in Frank's position, but we will be crossing the bridge at some point in our futures as well.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
I'm just going to make my son live with me forever, so it's all right. I'm never going to fully be empty nested.
Sorry, buddy.
Yeah, sorry, Lucas.
Yep. As we close up the show here, we got the 3-2-1. That's where Oz and I each share 3 goods, 2 bads, and 1 from the movie we just watched. In this case, Hearts Beat Loud. Oz, why don't you kick things off? What are your 3 goods?
I really like. I mean, it's kind of par for the course, but I really like the music in this movie. Mm-hmm. I really enjoyed it. The first time I saw this, I just shuffled through my Plex catalog, and it popped up, and I watched it. I think my daughter Ella even watched part of it with me. It's PG-13, but it's totally safe for kids to watch. I didn't find anything inappropriate. And I went and added the soundtrack to my Apple Music playlist because it's good. It's full of good songs. Yeah. I read in the trivia, and I thought it was really cool that all of the singing was recorded on set as they were singing. Yeah. This wasn't a lip syncing and then we'll dub it over with a studio recorded version of the same song. This is when you hear Nick Offerman singing in the movie, that's Nick Offerman singing in the movie.
Yeah,
which I thought was really cool.
And I could tell that as I was watching and listening to it, and it really added to kind of like the authenticity of the performances from the actors as well. Like there wasn't anything fake or phony about it. You could tell it was all real, and it was all there in the moment.
Yeah, and I really enjoyed the music and how they captured the music as well. I really also loved the final on-screen conversation between Sam and Frank, where they're having a beer after the store's closed, and it's the first time we see her act like the child and see him act like the parent.
Yes.
The whole movie, he's been stopped and redirected by his daughter. It's given advice by his bartender best friend. Like, he hasn't acted, I won't say he's immature because he's not, but he hasn't acted as a father, it's hard to put your thumb on because I don't want to sound like he's not a good dad, but he's been eclipsed by reason quite a bit in his excitement for the band. But this is the first time where she actually brings up about staying home, and he, no, you've got to go. Like I do. I really loved it because they switched the dynamic of their relationship, and she actually needed him to be a father, and he was there for her. And my third one, and this one's actually from my wife Jenny. We were both really happy that the movie avoided a Sam staying home ending.
Yeah.
Because it very easily, there was everything there for that to happen. Taking a gap year, you've got a reason to stay home and help your dad with a band. Like the pavement was laid for that travel, and they didn't do it. They, and that, kudos to the filmmakers. Send her off to school like it was intended. He'll be okay. She cannot be his safety net forever. He's got to learn how to get up. And in the words of the great father of Bruce Wayne, get up, Bruce. That's why we fall, so we learn how to get up. It's okay.
It's okay. It's okay, Bruce.
It's okay, Bruce.
It's okay, Bruce.
It's okay, Bruce. You only fell down a well.
Yeah.
It's okay.
It's okay, Bruce.
And
we're covered in bats.
I had to. Right. It's okay.
It's okay, Bruce.
It's okay. So, how about you? What are your 3 goods?
My 3 goods, first and foremost, dad vibes. Oh, this movie's just full of dad vibes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, and he's struggling. Not that dads are victims in any way, shape, or form, but again, he's struggling with where he's at in life. You know, his spouse has been deceased for almost a dozen years now. You know, his record store, which he's been running about as long as his daughter's been there, is closing up shop. You know, his daughter's leaving for school, and she's going to the other side of the country. He's got to find a new job. His friend circle isn't too tight. You know, there's a possibility of a romance with somebody he knows, but there's some big monkey wrenches there, and he's a dad, and he's doing his dad thing, and despite the fact that he does act out of selfishness and fear in some cases, he's ultimately a good dad, and yeah, that's what dads do, right?
Yeah. Right. Oh yeah, absolutely. It's not all. I mean, you know, understandably so. You know, moms get a lot of recognition for the hard work of their lives, you know, raising kids and giving birth and whatever. But, you know, times have changed, not across every household in the world, but times have changed quite a bit. And a lot of households actually do parent with both parents. Mm-hmm. It's, you know, your stay-at-home mom while dad's out, you know, earning the bread to keep the family afloat and actually has no hand in raising the kids, I know doesn't fly for either one of our houses.
Nope.
And so, you know, and so I could agree with you 100% that I really connected with Frank.
Yeah.
And it's just unfortunate that like all of these candles that he has lit are all going out at the same time, you know, over the course of the same summer, like his life is changing in August.
Yeah.
And it sucks.
Yeah. My second good is just the simplicity of the narrative. Again, it's nice, you know, to I guess with some of the movies we've had in the last several weeks, even going back the last month as well, some movies that are great movies but are just kind of hard to follow sometimes. You know, this movie had a very simple narrative, a simple story, and that's all it needed. It didn't pretend to be anything it wasn't. You know, again, there was a reason I only mentioned 6 characters during the character breakdown at the beginning. It's really primarily about 2 when there's a handful of supporting people around them, and you know, it's a simple, easy to follow movie, and that's not always a bad thing.
No, it is. It was cozy. It was a cozy film.
And my last good, I'm putting my day job professional hat on here. As a school counselor, they talk about financial aid and college expenses, and he does it. Yeah. And he does it in a way that any parent should. You know, looking at the facts and figures of things involved, and you know, UCLA only, you know, it's a $60,000 expense, but I only have to pay $12,000 a year. Like that's still $12,000, and
right.
And you know the financial literacy and you know the financial implications of those decisions is something conversations I have very frequently with students and families, and it was in its own weird way probably resonates with me more than the vast majority of viewers of this film. I was pleased to see a movie talk about college expenses. Because that's what I do for a living.
And it's not boring.
Yeah,
like it's like a small little conversation.
It's like 30 seconds, you know. But it's like I know what they're talking about.
It's not like It's not like George Lucas tricking you into the prequel trilogy with Star Wars only to really talk about politics the entire movie.
Yeah,
you know, like. Oh, that's a little bait and switch action. Yeah, this is so it is. It's good.
I was waiting for him to bring up the FAFSA and some of like the steps and things involved. Like no.
he's filling it out on the bar at Dave's.
So yeah, those are my 3 goods. Oz, what are your 2 bads for Hearts Beat Loud?
With a tight little movie like this, it was really hard to find anything like glaringly bad. There were a couple things we already mentioned that aren't on my bads. Leslie just conveniently being where she needs to be. You know, Jeff Tweedy's cameo for no other reason than Jeff Tweedy has a cameo. You know, those little things. But my two bads are, one, you know, like the Sam and Rose relationship. It just apparently just ended that night, like very abrupt. And granted, I know that wasn't the driving relationship of the movie. It was between Sam and Frank. But, you know, it's just a little bit like, what happened there? Like, she maintained connection with her dad from the other side of the country and still doing the music thing and still doing, you know. But it's like, even one little glimmer of like, what happened with Sam and Rose? Are you guys still anything? Is it, did you cry it out and that was it? Like, I would have liked to seen that concluded somehow. And then my second one, again, not a music industry professional or amateur by any means, but boy, making it sure seemed easy for We're Not a Band.
Yeah. like 36 hours after recording the song.
Yeah.
It's trending on Spotify.
Exactly. You record a song on a Wednesday night, we'll say, and then you dump it into the Spotify ocean Thursday afternoon, and Friday morning it's playing at your coffee shop.
Yep.
Like, wow.
If only it was that easy.
Yeah. So that was my second one. I was like, I don't know if that's an accurate reflection on how the music industry
really works. Yeah.
Like, wow, this is such a great song. Anyway, how about your two bads?
My two bads, my first is that the Dave and Marianne characters are kind of inconsequential and unnecessary. Like, the only reason that Marianne character, again, Frank's mother character, is there is just to throw him another monkey wrench. Like, and there's a little moment between her and Sam, but like, the movie wouldn't have lost any steam without those things.
No.
And so
it almost, in a couple scenes, it almost taps the brakes a little bit.
Yeah. And Dave is really just there for Frank to just kind of verbalize his emotions with. Like
to another male.
Yeah.
Like, it's the only other guy in the movie.
Yeah, I mean, so he's, I don't know. It just, the characters didn't do anything other than just be there to kind of enhance like the roles or the struggles of the two leads.
Right.
And I mean, and you could say that about a lot of movies, but I just thought it was pretty glaring here.
Well, especially when, you know, you think back, we never saw a conversation between Frank and his mom. Like, every time that his mom was in the movie he was dealing with the police. Mm-hmm. Like, we just never saw him talk. They may have at the very end, but it's like throughout the movie, it was just, like you said, just another inconvenience of like, oh, mom's stolen again.
Yep. Yeah, there she is.
Get her some help, Frank.
Yeah.
Get her some help.
And then my other one, and this is really nitpicky, some of this, the set design, the family photos in movies, like you see like they'll take older photos of actors and make like photos that they have in like the characters' living rooms and things.
These are bad.
The family photos in this movie were really bad, like really
they were
bad. Like, they didn't look natural at all.
No.
So it's like you pan across these photos in the living room and it's like, ooh, like that's. Those pictures were like, those two characters were clearly not in the same picture or photo when this was taken.
And Frank is in much better shape and better looking now than he was in his music prime.
Yeah.
He was kind of a bloated. The Photoshop job was not very good. I agree.
So again, that's a little nitpicky, but like you could do a little bit better with that. I know this was low budget, but yeah.
Right.
So that leaves us with our So what's your for Hearts Beat Loud?
My Frank and Sam live very comfortable on a failing record store income.
You just stole mine, by the way.
They live very comfortably. Not only the UCLA thing, because whatever, you could get student loans and other assistance for that, but it's like, you're living in New York, and you've got a very large place to live, apartment, whatever, but you're doing just fine. Couple Macs, new instruments, like, you do very well for, where we've seen like 7 or 8 total customers in your record store the entire summer. So that's my apparently it was yours too.
It was. I'll adjust on the fly here and say that something that we mentioned earlier. When he went out and bought that new guitar for himself and that new sampler for himself, and she's like, we got to take those back, right? And then she just ends up using it. So
right, yeah. Well, can't take them back now.
Little hypocritical there, Sam.
Yeah.
So
I'll chalk that up to her still being a teenager.
Sure.
Like she was she was being the more mature one, but still like at her core, she's like, well, I have always wanted one, and I am a teenager. Like,
well,
this is
it's
sweet.
here.
Might as well use it.
You already set it
right.
up.
right. So, all right. Well, that's Hearts Beat Loud. Our reviews and our 3, 2, 1s over it. It's that time of the show where we go through our little blurb of comment, like, subscribe, review, share, all that stuff. We're on social media: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube. All the fun things that we say at the end of every show.
Yep.
So please keep sharing it out there. What do we got on store next week, bud?
Next week, we're going into straight up comedy with Walk Hard, the Dewey Cox story.
I'm so happy.
We're not doing Ray. We're not doing Walk the Line. We're doing the movie that makes fun of those movies. And
we're doing them all. We're doing all of them in one. It's the exact same story. Verbatim.
I love this movie, and I'm so looking forward to the session next week. Just because it's such a fun, goofy movie with just such fun, goofy performances.
The hard time we're gonna have next week is keeping this under allotted time.
Oh yeah, because all we're gonna do is like repeat the favorite jokes to each other and just laugh for an hour plus.
We'll get it done. And I also know that this movie I will be watching alone for next week because my wife has zero interest in watching this with me. No, what are you watching next week? Dewey Cox. She's like, it's all you. All right, babe. Thanks. So that's what we got going next week. I'm so looking forward to it.
Me too.
So much so. All right. Well, you want to take us out?
Sure. Well, folks, this was Let's Talk About Flicks with Oz and Curtis. He is
Oz.
and I am.
He is.
And I am Curtis. And we will see you next week, folks.
All right. Take care. Have a good week.